Greetings and bienvenue, MITZU. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Has anyone here pulled off remote viewing? Can you answer something for me? What's it like? And why does the CIA paper sound like they think something is going on, but aren't sure if it's remote viewing, and might not be suitable for intelligence stuff? What's remote viewing like? How come it isn't good for intelligence? I thought that's like essentially what it is, right? Projecting your awareness through space and maybe time, and watching it like an invisible ghost. How would that not be sufficient? And how could that possibly be inconclusive? I haven't remote viewed, so I don't know what it's supposed to be like.
Does the Department of Defense release and declassify schematics of how to make various missiles? What about an Abrams tank? Does that paper exist? No. Well, okay, then why the hell is the CIA going to release a method, remote viewing, that can potentially allow any randos to look up the schematics and secrets of the US military? Think about it hard and long. The reason the remote viewing CIA papers are declassified is that it didn't work. Abraham tank works, missiles work, so they are guarded secrets that never will be declassified. That's real power. If remote viewing was real and CIA had access to it, they would never in a lifetime release such a tech to the public ever.
It's also possible that they demonstrated it works, along with other paranormal technologies, but aren't willing to use it because they would lose control of any agent using it. Imagine you one day learn how to read minds, remote view, and gain psychic powers. Are you going to follow orders? You can literally do everything, and they can't touch you because you might end up developing mind control too. That knowledge is too dangerous for their power. They don't want anyone, even their own agents, to use it or even know it works. That's why they try so hard to debunk it. Imagine what a mass psychic awakening would do to the CIA's masters.
Okay, but then release it to the public so that military departments of other countries who just want to grift their government for extra budget start working on it and discover it works by accident. You know how many of the conspiracy people have zero trust in the government, right? The government knows that, and there is no chance in hell they release something that works like this and try to debunk, given that they know conspiracy people will try their best to study and make it work. They would never release them if there was even a 1% chance that it works. Same way that they are not releasing the schematics for their now obsolete armor models.
The reason the CIA doesn't care if you use their or other independently developed method of remote viewing is because the results are too vague to be of any actionable use. In the best cases, a very strong 1 in a million visual impression is a blurry tenth of a second image that you must then transcribe quickly as a probably even shittier rapid drawing. The CIA can't do anything when some dork in a room got the impressions green stinky and drew a box when they gave him the name of a cocaine smuggler and some coordinates. It's interesting because it proves that ESP exists in at least one form, but for most people it's only a weird little game to play. It's not even clear if it can be improved with practice. Even the experts get a lot of useless impressions and miss more than they hit.
There's actually a very simple answer for this. The CIA brought in some statistics PhD to look over their results and recommend whether or not they should continue the program. The PhD said this, paraphrasing: the results indicate that remote viewing does actually work, but it is akin to a home run in baseball. Problem is, we can't watch and verify if a home run was hit or not until we physically see where they were viewing. Despite all of our statistics on baseball, we cannot accurately predict home runs, when or where they will occur. Remote viewing is like that. You can get the best viewer in the world, but he can still only hit a home run less than 10% of the time. So remote viewing can work, but it is extremely difficult, and we aren't even sure how or why it works, and how or why it doesn't work under the same conditions. It is a shot in the dark. The PhD recommended we discontinue the program due to this. It is real, but not actually useful to any degree worth continuing the program.
Okay, so it's basically bull, in a sense that it has zero applications or reliability, so viewing things in past or future or birdwatching events and facilities and secret locations is not possible. That's what I'm saying. Didn't say it's not real. I'm saying CIA wouldn't release it if their method was a working success.
Yes, I would generally agree on your wording as you've put it in this comment. Though I will say successful penetration of a Soviet production facility was confirmed, including a dual-rail crane which was unknown to U.S. intelligence at the time. So when you mention facilities and secret locations, that actually has been done successfully. Of course, they couldn't confirm this until much later. There is another instance where a guy got everything right, except he said there was a water tower in a spot where there was nothing. Turns out there was a water tower there 70 years prior. So time is another factor that needs to be worked out. Regardless, whatever mechanism is allowing this to be possible, it all should be explored. It is likely connected with quantum mechanics, the observer effect, something like that.
I'm gonna give you my experience. For around 2 years, around 2020 and 2022, I could see things consistently and accurately when focusing on someone or something. I tested this with people I knew on the internet and people I knew in real life. They'd always come back for more and ask me to remote view them cause they'd find it interesting or exciting. So I tested a lot because of that, and the accuracy was 100%, no failed attempts. However, I stopped doing it for some time, and at the end of 2022 when I gave it a try, it felt really difficult, like shit wasn't forming when I closed my eyes like it used to before. I've been trying here and there since then, and I've had one detailed successful attempt when before all were successful attempts. Also back then it took me around 1 or 2 minutes tops to start seeing shit. Now I need to relax and sort of meditate for around 10 or 15 minutes to even produce something. As for the details of how it feels or how it's like, for me personally, I discovered it by chance when messing around with a friend. Didn't even take it seriously until like 6 months and of doing it consistently cause I kept thinking it had to be a coincidence. I don't know what the CIA papers are, and as for how it looks like when I remote view, focus my gaze, I think, on the dark of my eyelids with my eyes closed, and then think of someone or something specific and images will start forming in the dark, and it's always stuff that's around the person I'm focusing in, or the object. I've had a couple ones where it went beyond that and I saw the interior of the house of a friend. Never been there and don't know him in person. I could move around and see his wife washing plates in the kitchen and his kids watching some dinosaur cartoon show on TV. It confirmed it after, obviously. 99% of the time is how I've described first though, just single objects or even people around the person I focus on.
I have been able to remote view things inside the moon since I was a small child. I remember feeling fear when humans first impacted the moon, reverberating the entire internal structure. I remember my perspective of being inside the moon. I feel as though they are hiding not just from us but something else from finding them. I know this sounds rather scatterbrained, but these images and perceptions in my head during deep sleep are very erratic, and it takes a long time focusing on the surroundings to figure out where and who I am. These dreams have shown to be accurate to a frightening degree, with a usual time lag of 6 months to 2 years. I can never predict or sense something that will happen tomorrow, for example. It always seems to happen within a couple years. It happens randomly, although certain life events act as a trigger and seems to induce the state of being in my sleep cycle that makes it easy to start searching for things that will happen in the near future. The visions of perceptions in other beings' eyes are rare, but my recollection of what's happening inside the moon are the most vivid when they do happen. What being I am seeing through, or if it is human, I have no idea. There is a deliberate jammer of sorts built into the massive structure which limits information from getting out. Once you're in, no knowledge leaves with you. I have been training my dream self, for lack of a better word, to somehow preserve bits and pieces of who and what is inside our moon. They didn't feel evil. I actually never felt more than one entity. I am fairly positive they, if there is more than one, they aren't physical beings but are hiding their frequency from others, noticing them to such a degree that they are invisible just as they would like. There are alarms when astral beings, dream self, penetrate the barrier of a rock bed concealing the compound below. There is a massive system of aqueducts and labyrinths and tunnels deep inside the moon which is filled to the brim with a strange out-of-this-world form of liquid metallic water, feeding some sort of mechanism in place that is constantly working and using massive amounts of energy to power the moon. There are actual spiritual defense systems in place, trapping you temporarily in the depths and deleting your knowledge of the compound and how to get there. There are always cracks and ways in. How I do it I have no idea, but when I wake up from these visions I have a sense of urgency and immediate need to recollect my memories of the dream ASAP before they are gone forever. You get zapped, to put it simply, trapped, contained for a moment, but not by any will other than your own. You suddenly feel vulnerable and fearful that you will never escape, and thus bring yourself back to your body at an instant in the distorted realization that you traversed too far from your body and damaged your soul's metaphysical integrity. This is a distortion. You always have free will no matter the conscious perspective you happen to apprehend at the time, whether it be in your body or out of it. Think of that feeling you get when you hold your breath too long underwater and you're struggling to get back up to surface. This is essentially the jammer or spiritual defense system influencing you to make a decision to return home without memory to protect yourself from running out of breath, so to speak. Although in my opinion there is no way to be endangered in your dream self state of being, and any inclination/thought feeling presented into you is draining you of vital energies, greatly limiting your ability to make the choice to venture deeper into the catacombs of the facility. It's cliché as hell, but the only thing to fear is fear implanted into you. We are sovereign beings, and by default fear is a foreign ailment to us. It can't infiltrate the seat of our soul, but it can latch onto the outside of your physical body and weigh you down over time.
I think they are connected to beings which are connected with everything. We are not those beings. Those beings have been trying to bridge the gap of understanding between life and themselves. They operate on the fabric of the universe, outside of physical restraints. You can find them dotted around Earth, known as hallucinations, but if given the right amount of time and a difficult amount of learning to process the information, sometimes you can hear people's prayers and reply to them on behalf of the beings. People keep calling me God during the early hours of some mornings. And I can see people who are dying in different circumstances. It's a difficult role to understand because it's hard to tell what is made in your mind and what is being projected into it. But it's fascinating to explore the creative processes of the brain with a spiritual guide who uses what you have learned through the day as a catalyst to mold your brain into receiving their messages. Only suckish part is that it's not always in English and needs translation. Last night I received a message but was unable to decipher because my imagination has been dampened by an anti-psychic, so things aren't as clear as they used to be.
Leaving the physical body for astral travel requires 3 conditions. 1. Induction of left brain quietness and deep physical relaxation via REM frequencies. 2. Synchronization of brain hemisphere wave patterns. 3. Stimulation of the right hemisphere to gain heightened alertness. This does interfere with hemispheric synchronization, but not before the high frequency range necessary for attaining out-of-body status is established. When both brain hemispheres electrically fire at the same rate, this creates a chain reaction which results in the body oscillating at 7.5 Hz. The same rate the electromagnetic field in our external environment resonates at. This state of vibratory harmony transforms the world and beyond into an extension of the human body. The person's consciousness or soul, which is normally restricted within the confines of the physical body's regular rate of oscillation, may then transcend the body and move freely outside the physical body, including interdimensionally. This process is what esoteric cults term becoming one with the universe.
I think I remote viewed once out of sheer despair. I think so at least. I was looking for a lost key and I knew I was screwed if I lost it. After a sort of little silent breakdown, I had some real schizo moment. My brain was thinking about where it could be and I thought something like, yeah, I can use the finder. In crazy despair, I even noticed a second after that there is no such thing as the finder. Shortly after, I knew the key fell out of my pocket and was inside a rail of my car's seat. I checked just in time and found it there. It laid exactly there.
Everything is remote viewing. What is remote viewing? In the 70s and 80s, the US government ran multiple top-secret programs that utilized psychic spies for gathering intelligence. Allegedly, these programs never produced intelligence that was consequential, and the government never operated based on intelligence gained solely through psychic means. The programs were discontinued and the documents relating to them were mostly declassified, which is why we now have movies like Third Eye Spies and people like Russell Targ and Joe McMoneagle are able to share their stories, which contradict the official narrative. They claim the programs were fantastically successful and produced actionable intelligence that would have been impossible to gather any other way at the time. Now, in the age of spy satellites and smartphones, governments have much more sophisticated means of spying that don't rely on pseudoscience. Pseudoscience. The evidence for the existence of psychic phenomena is immense. Names like Russell Targ, mentioned previously, as well as Ingo Swann, Rupert Sheldrake, and Paul Smith, among others, have cumulatively spent over a lifetime gathering evidence in accord with modern scientific rigor. How to do remote viewing? While specific techniques vary, the most common element in remote viewing instruction is to sit in quiet meditation, focus your mind on the target, and let the images come to you. Often, the remote viewer will be assisted by a trained monitor who converses with the remote viewer to help them sort images from imaginings, and essential elements of information are written down to later be pieced together like a puzzle. So why is everything remote viewing? Men like Russell Targ and Ingo Swann postulate that psychic powers are not rare, and in fact are naturally evolved abilities, just like walking and seeing. If a creature is able to sense when it is being watched by a predator, it is more likely to escape and pass on the ability to its offspring. If a creature can intuit when there is going to be an earthquake or a landslide, it can escape and survive. It should be no question that if any kind of psychic powers are possible, there must be massive selective pressure for conscious animals to develop them, and indeed you can speak to almost anyone and they will be able to relate some unexplained event where they intuited something or gained knowledge that was otherwise unknowable. Where psychics differ is having a greater knack for filtering cosmic intelligence from their own mental noise. Reading tarot cards is remote viewing. In a tarot reading session, a random selection of cards are drawn, and the reader constructs a narrative. The goal is often to predict something or answer a question, but even exposing undisclosed background information about the subject can be enough to impress them and earn the reader their payment. When you strip away the pizzazz, tarot reading is a practice of quiet meditation. By asking the cards for information, the reader naturally gets into an appropriate frame of mind, they quiet their mind, block out mental noise, and openly receive the surprising, intuitive information that could only be found through remote viewing. By going through the ritual of selecting the cards, the reader gets into a comfortable focus with their subject as the target. They are much less likely to remote view something unrelated, like the weather in Brazil or what their dog is chewing at home. Palmistry is remote viewing. Much like tarot reading, palmistry is a ritual that allows the reader to focus on their subject as their remote viewing target. However, it bears special emphasis that having close contact with a person gives all kinds of information about their background and their life, which is what street performers use to wow tourists. How the subject is dressed, their physique, their facial hair, the calluses on their hands, and even the company the subject is with, all of these provide clues for the street performer to divine information about the subject's life. It is not my opinion that any of the creases on one's hands have any bearing on the course of a person's life outside of what could be concretely deduced, calluses, scars, etc. But when a reader who believes in their practice tries in earnest to read someone's future on their palm, they naturally fall into an appropriate state of mind to receive cosmic information via remote viewing using those natural capacities we all have. Graphology is remote viewing. Most of what I said about palmistry applies the same here. You can tell from handwriting whether the writer is a man or a woman. You can tell their age usually. Even subtle things like how the graphite is smudged can give you a clue if the writer is left-handed or right-handed. There is room for a sort of street performing with graphology, just like with palmistry, and like palmistry, the actual details of a person's handwriting probably have nothing to do with their personality or their fate. But when a reader believes they do, they try in earnest to divine the subject's fate, and they naturally focus their mind and become receptive to remote, psychic information. Focusing on the subject's handwriting serves as a mental anchor so they are less likely to target something unrelated. New Age astrology might be remote viewing. I will not comment on the ancient practices of astrology, often called Hellenistic astrology, because some aspects of the old techniques have been verified empirically. The premier example of this is the Gauquelin effect, which correlates the success of professional athletes with the position of Mars at the time of their birth. The strength of this correlation is far beyond statistical impossibility, and establishes some sort of causal relationship, though the reasons for this relationship are still unknown to science. When referring to New Age astrology, I'm specifically referring to practices that include planets like Neptune, which was not discovered until the 19th century, or Pluto, discovered in 1930. Naming these planets after gods is nothing more than a modern convention, since ancient astrologers would have been completely unaware of their existence. Because their orbits are so slow, their effects, if any, would change so subtly as to be unrecognizable even after centuries of practice. the effects attributed to Neptune and Pluto are completely arbitrary, chosen only because of the names applied to them by modern astronomers, which are even names chosen arbitrarily from a roster of mythological characters. New Age astrologers claiming to know anything about the effects these planets might have on us is nothing other than hubris. However, when an astrologer reads a chart, they are usually not inventing flights of fancy. An astrologer who believes in their craft, belief is the theme today, will try in earnest to divine some information about a person, and in so doing will enter the proper frame of mind for remote viewing. They are focused on their target, they ignore their own mental noise, and they become openly receptive to surprising, intuitive images that appear to them. They can gather details about a person's life, their personality, and highly probable events in their future. For the New Age astrologer, correlating these with their chart is essentially a formality. If their product is real and actionable, they are professional remote viewers, even if they do not realize it.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.
There's also a Rumble archive as a backup.